you received some data. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned that it goes, or it's measured sort of by triggers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And from the data that you were able to obtain from the defendant's vehicle, what type of data were you able to retrieve as it relates to the vehicle control history?
Yeah, so I mean, this had like a page and a half full of triggers that over the vehicle's time span that it captured.
And with respect to the triggers, how many triggers did it capture?
It's like a page and a half. I don't know exact numbers of how many triggers. Oh, yeah. So 22 separate triggers. Those are, so in my report, it says 22 separate triggers that occurred on odometer mileage 12665 to 12666.
And what was the mileage that you observed on the vehicle at inspection?
12,665.
And at the time that you conducted this Toyota TechStream download from the vehicle, what was the mileage at that time?
12,666.
There's also reference within the vehicle control history data in regard to something called a key cycle. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what a key cycle is?
So a key cycle is essentially from when the vehicle's off, it's pressed on. It doesn't necessarily need to be running or turned on. It just needs to be turned on and then off again, and that would be one key cycle.
What, if any, role did the key cycle numbers, or what kind of role did that play in your analysis?
So when I turned the vehicle on, when I did my testing, it shows me what key cycle it was that I was on when I did those testings, and then the odometer mileage in relationship to that. I have noted through arrows here, these were when the vehicle was with us, and a lot of this is related to my testing with the vehicle. And these right before that were the triggers that were prior to those testings.
Within this table, sir, there are two triggers reported at odometer mile 12,629.
Yes.
And what's the key cycle associated with 12,629?
1,162.
And that occurs prior to the 12,665, 12,666 during the course of your braking and acceleration test, correct?
Correct.
And how many key cycles were different between your testing and that odometer reading of 12,629?
2 key cycles.
His key cycle is 1164 on the bottom. His key cycle is taking it out of Canton. When he drives it out of the Sallyport in Canton, that would be key cycle 1164. When it got taken off of the tow truck and driven into that Sallyport, that would have been 1163. And when it got put on the tow truck, that would have been 1162. So at 1162, this event, what he has to do is figure out how, between that event, did they get 36 miles put on the car.
The mileage difference between those two, did you do that math?
Yes.
What was the mileage difference between the two?
36. Yeah, so yeah, I was told that where she traveled afterwards or prior to that, I was noted their locations, and I used those locations through Google to get a mileage for them. So when I got the directions, it showed that we got from 34 Fairview Road to 1 Meadows Ave. So I did that with every direction from 1 Meadows Ave to Waterfall to 12 Country Lane, and 12 Country Lane to 1 Meadows Ave, and then 1 Meadows Ave to 345 Country Hill Drive, North Dighton. Then at the bottom here, I did a total distance, and I did a min and the max distance of, and the minimum was 36.1 and a max distance of 38.8.
So he now told us that he went through all of the events from the night before, or from the time that they had learned what they did, and it came out to be somewhere between 36 and 38, which makes 0 sense because, as I showed you, there were 1159, 1160, 1161, 3 other key cycles. Now, they're not showing up on this report because this report's only showing up key cycles that have triggers. So there was no trigger in 1163, so we don't see it here. 1162 had triggers, so we see it here. Anytime other than this. So at 1162, the car is on for 20 minutes. It started at 10 minutes into it being on. He tells us it does a U-turn. And then about 9 minutes after that, or 8 minutes after that, it does a very aggressive reverse, straight back for about 90 feet, and then home.
So each row, starting from the top, is the vehicle control history time, which is the time that's recorded in the module itself, or in the software that gets recorded as each time, and it's recorded as seconds. This time is the time from the start of the key cycle. So it starts off with 652.8. This shows that the vehicle is traveling at 9.9 miles per hour. It's slowing down to about 0 right here, and then stops for that time, and then speeds back up to. It goes up to 6.2, and then slows back down to 0, and then back up to 1.7 to, I think it's 8.7. This is the accelerator opening ratio, which is really where this trigger comes from, because the trigger is labeled as the accelerator pedal opening angle is medium to higher immediately after shifting to reverse. All right, they label it as R.
Meaning that the event that triggered during what he's going to tell us was probably a pedestrian accident was the exact same event that triggered here when he says it's a U-turn. And if anything, what happens here is more jarring because of the angle of the steering wheel. During the pedestrian accident, he says it barely moves.
And it also shows from the beginning, goes from 0 and increases up to 50.5%, and that's 5 seconds. That's only, a little over a second past the trigger. And so up to 50%, and then back off, and then back onto the accelerator again, up to 34%.
Do you have any opinion as to sort of what type of maneuver or what type of actions the vehicle was taking during the course of this triggering event?
Yes, this appears the vehicle was slowing down and making a U-turn, because also the other thing into it shows steering signal, and the steering wheel will show that she was driving left and then right and the back left again, and also when she's on the brake switch.
This is the VCH data chart from that same mileage or the second triggering event as far as 12,629 miles peak, correct?
Correct.
And again, this is in the same odometer range as well as the same key cycle as what was just up on the screen as far as 12,629 miles A, correct?
Yes.
And this occurs after A, is that fair to say?
Correct. The trigger time is 1,142.2 seconds after key cycle. And this one shows all the same thing, 10 seconds of data. And let's go, so the vehicle speed on this one shows that she's slowing down. It's 13.7 miles per hour and gets down to 0. Then she's down to 0 for a while, and then the vehicle speed increases up to 24.2 miles per hour at its max speed. Then it goes down to 23.6 as the last two labels. And the accelerator pedal angle at this point at key trigger is 36.5.
What, if anything, are you able to tell from this data as far as when that occurred in relation to 12629A?
So 12629A occurred 8 minutes prior to the other one, and they both occurred on the same odometer mileage. So this one shows that the vehicle was in drive. It starts off in drive. It's slowing down to 0, and it goes to 0, which is neutral. Then it goes down. Then it goes into reverse. So it's going straight, it stops, then it gets placed in reverse, and then goes back, goes in reverse.
What, if anything, do you observe with reference to the change in the steering angle of the steering wheel?
It does not change much. It's only 13. I think the far it goes is left is at 13.5%. So that's only, if the steering wheel is a circle, the whole circle is 360 degrees. So 13.5% is only and it's still fairly straight in the vehicle. And
What, if anything, were you able to do as far as distance travel, and how were you able to determine that?
so I used the spherical speeds and the time, and calculated a distance that the vehicle traveled during this time.
And as far as the total distance traveled from the 0 to the 23.6 at the end, what was the total distance there?
97.35 feet.
From 12,629 miles B. What, if any, type of collision is that data set consistent with, and why?
Yeah, there's a point in there where it appears to be consistent with a pedestrian strike.
And why is it that your interpretation of that data you feel is consistent with the pedestrian strike?
It's the sudden change of speed at 24.2 to 23.6 in a half second, while the accelerator pedal is still at a consistent 74%.
As far as the injuries that you were informed by the medical examiner that Mr. O'Keefe had sustained,
Yes.
what, if any, relationship did those injuries have in relation to a pedestrian collision?
They are consistent with a pedestrian collision.
And how so?
Due to, we can break down each injury, to the arm, the lacerations of the arm from the tail light, the dent where the scratches for his hand could be. Those are something that would be consistent with this, in this particular case, with striking the Lexus.
So the way I see it, unless there was another key cycle between when they put it on the truck, the tow truck, and when they put it in the Sally port, which would change the 62 to be a different key cycle, then they're saying that all this happened when it got on the flatbed U-Haul based on key cycle. It makes no sense. I don't understand. I cannot wait for Jackson to start asking questions.
I'm going to allow it.